ahead and tuck that cable all the way down, all the way in this slot, and it'll come out pretty close to the bottom. And on the second nut from the bottom, remember you've got these nuts in here that slide up and down this rail. On the second nut from the bottom, go ahead and tighten the bracket that's actually on the end of this cable. Now on this bolt you're going to have 3 or 4 washers. They're held on by a tie wrap. Cut the tie wrap, but don't take the washers off. You need the washers on there to protect you from over-tightening this bolt and possibly damaging the aluminum track. So go ahead and get this bolt nice and snug, but don't really over-torque it. It just needs to be nice and snug. The next thing we're going to do is there's a plastic guide chain that is attached to the carriage. In other words, here's that plastic guide chain. It's got a tie wrap here. We're going to take and we're going to unfold this plastic guide chain, and we're going to push it down inside the rail. Now on the side of the rail closest to the wall, the plastic chain is going to go down. It's going to loop along the bottom and come back up. Now you can see on this side of the chain, you can actually see the gray cable that runs through the chain. Like I say, this is your charging cable on the DC unit. It's your AC power on the AC unit. So push that chain down inside the rail on both sides. Push the cable down inside the rail. As you're pushing it down, inspect the chain and make sure that all of the links are good and tight. If any of these links have popped open, just snap them back together. You can easily snap them back together with your fingers. Here, what I'm showing is the cable, the gray cable. This cable is actually running from the header. This is bringing the power from the header at the top of the stairs. The power comes down through that gray cable. That gray cable enters this plastic chain, goes around through this plastic chain, and actually up to the carriage. So this is the charging cable and the DC unit and the power cable and the AC unit. Now right where that gray cable enters the chain, you're going to have a mounting bracket. This mounting bracket will come with a self-tapping screw. Once you have your cable and your chain all shoved in, go ahead and take out your cordless drill and zip in that self-tapping screw. Now, there are 2 holes in the bracket. You only need to use 1 screw. The reason we put 2 holes is you wouldn't want to put that screw in right over that joint and possibly spread the rails apart. So avoid a joint, but it's only necessary to put in 1 screw. We'll go back up to the top header. Say we've got that cable that we ran down through the slot on the side for the lower call send button. We got the cable now in the other 3-pin connector for the call send button that will be on the upper landing. And because this is a DC unit, we're showing the trickle charger plugged into the 2-pin connector on the header. If this was an AC unit, you just have a 3-pin power cord, AC power cord plugged in there. On the DC unit, it is shipped with the batteries already installed. We're looking in the carriage right where the seat is going to go on and cover this. But the first thing you want to do on the DC unit is locate this connector on the black wire. This connector will not be connected to the battery. It's left off during shipping because anytime the connector is on this battery terminal, there's a power relay that pulls in. And that power relay will constantly be draining the battery. So during shipping, it may sit for a couple of weeks or so, and that may be enough to drain these batteries down low enough that your stair lift isn't going to work the first time. So be sure to locate that black wire and just go ahead and push it onto this battery terminal. As soon as you push it on, you'll hear a click, and that click is that power relay coming in. If you don't hear that click, inspect all these other connections and it could be that you have a battery that's too low in voltage to pull that relay in. Over here we've got another connector. This is going to be the seat connector. This connector carries the wires for the up-down switch on the seat, and it also carries the wiring for the seat safety switch. You take your seat out and turn it over. Here's the connector that's going to connect into the carriage. Here is the safety switch. What the safety switch does is if you rotate the seat away from its normal riding position, the stair lift will not move. It will make your hand control dead. And this is for safety reasons. You only want to be riding the stair lift up and down when the seat is in its locked position. Now, while we're looking at this cable, if you ever have to do any troubleshooting in one of our stair lifts, here's a little hint. All of the up wiring is associated with the blue-colored wiring. All of the down functions are associated with the red-colored wiring. So if you ever have to get inside this unit and start to do some troubleshooting, and it'll only go down and not up, then you know you should start tracing out your blue wiring. If it'll only go up and not down, start tracing out your red wires. Now, the easiest way to remember which is which is blue sky. So the blue wiring will take you toward the sky. This shows the seat connector ready to go. And of course, this is a unit with the batteries removed. Go ahead and plug the two connectors together and mount the seat on the carriage. Remember, the seat and the foot plate and everything is going to be facing toward the far wall. The seat should be locked into position. It mounts with 4 screws. There's one here, one here, one here, and one here. Go ahead and attach with the 4 screws. Now, if for some reason you go to put one of these screws in and for some reason it just doesn't line up, there's really nothing bent or damaged. It's just that during shipping, this carriage has gotten out of alignment. So once we have the seat on, attach the seat back with 2 screws, and you can pretty much choose a height depending on the stair lift user. The next thing we want to do once we got the seat on there, and particularly if we can't get one of these screws in, we have to level the carriage. Now, there are 4 bolts. There's a bolt here. He's pointing to a bolt here. There are 2 corresponding ones on the back side. These are actually seat leveling bolts. Like I said, sometimes in shipping, this whole carriage box will get flipped upside down, and that will cause the carriage to become misaligned. The carriage is actually an inner and an outer piece, and if they're misaligned, you're going to have a hard time getting the seat on. Always, no matter if the carriage is level or not, no matter if you have a hard time getting the seat on or if it goes right on, always loosen these 4 bolts. If that carriage had got tipped upside down and had gotten misaligned, you'll hear a pop, and that will be it realigning itself. So remember, even if everything looks perfectly level, go ahead and loosen those 4 bolts. Listen for the pop. If you don't hear it, just go ahead and tighten those bolts back up, making sure the seat is level. Now you're able to push the switch and run your stair lift all the way to the bottom. Now there's a couple things we can look at. Of course, here's the switch here, the up and down switch, this side for down, push this side for up. You've got foot plate here where you rest your feet. Now on the bottom of this foot plate is a safety pan. This safety pan has micro switches in it. So if you're going up the stairs and something gets in the way of that pan, it's going to click that micro switch and stop you from going upstairs. Now you can still go back down so you can remove any obstruction. The same thing as you're coming downstairs. If you have an obstruction, it's going to push this pan in, click that switch, and stop you from going down. You can go back up, remove the obstruction, then you'll be able to go back down. Now, like I said, this seat can swivel, and you push forward on this lever. There's a lever on either side of the seat, and you can swivel it 45 or 90 degrees. Now, it's usually not necessary on the bottom floor to swivel the seat because, as you can see, you're stepping right off onto the floor. But when you're on the top, you never want to step out over a step. You always want to step out over the landing. So when you're all the way to the top, swivel this seat 45 degrees or 90 degrees so you actually step off over the landing. Now at the top, just like that little switch we had at the bottom that stops it, we've got an upper limit switch. Normally that upper limit switch will be all the way slid up against the bracket on top. You can, if you want to stop it sooner, which will cause it to stop the seat bottom to be a little bit lower, you can slide it down. Now while we're looking here, we can see a couple other interesting things. We can see where the cable's attached. And we can also see this bracket here. This bracket is another safety feature. It's the final limit switch. This bracket comes down, it's L-shaped, and if it slides back, it will click this little micro switch and will remove all power from the lift. So if for some reason this bracket should become loose or break off, or if the switch that it activates should fail, the edge of the carriage will hit this bracket, push it back, and click this switch. That removes all power from the lift. In order to get your lift working again, take out your little slack cable tool, wind the carriage down a little bit, take that same slack cable tool and push on the back of this bracket so it slides on out and releases this switch. This bracket's mounted with a couple of bolts here. They should be snug but not tight. You should be able to slide this bracket up and down. Remember, this is the final safety switch. This is what will stop the lift from trying to overwind this cable up if this switch here should fail. Now that we've ridden the stair lift up and down and everything looks good, make sure that you've got good clearance off the wall. Make sure that the seat back is about an inch away from the wall. Once you've determined that that seat back is about an inch away from the wall, you can go ahead and put the other two screws on this first step. If the seat back is touching the wall or you feel it's too close to the wall, take the two screws out that you originally had, move it over a half inch or an inch, then go ahead and put all four screws back in. Now, the number of brackets you have, of course, is going to depend on the number of stairs you have. Remember, we never put brackets on the floor. We never put brackets on the top landing. We put the brackets, the first set of brackets on the first step, the last set of brackets on the last step before the landing. Now, where do we put these brackets? Of course, the first step, the last step, and we want to put a set of brackets on either side of every joint. Now, ideally, you would have a bracket here on this step, but because this slider is here, you don't have any room to mount it. It's okay to mount it down on this lower step.